Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to episode 223 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. I'm so glad to have you with us today. Thanks for spending some time to find out more about the bar exam and all things bar exam related. It's been quite a week in bar exam life. Last week, we were just putting the finishing touches on episode 222, and we packed it all up, finished it, the editors were done, we shipped it off to be rendered and set up for delivery, and no more had we done that than Texas, oh, you gotta love those Texas bar examiners, they released the results for the July 2018 Texas bar exam on Monday morning. Now, they had said they were going to release it the next Friday afternoon, so pretty close, right? And those results are out. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk about those Texas bar results. If you want the Reader's Digest quick peek, it was really, really bad. A big drop from last July, really poor numbers all across the board. And that's unfortunate. And then we're going to kind of try and lighten the mood a little bit with an interview I conducted last week with a successful Texas bar taker, Jason Sorensen. Jason's actually passed 2 bars with Celebration Bar Review, the New York exam back in 2015, and then the Texas bar in July 2018. And you'll see he's just a very low-key, relaxed kind of guy. He's going to talk a little bit about what he did on his half day off during the exam. You're going to be surprised at how he got prepared for the rest of the exam with that half day off. In any event, it's a great interview. I hope you'll stick around for that. Now, if this is your first time with us on the podcast, I do want to welcome you. We're glad to have you here. Each week we come to you on Wednesday mornings with whatever's going on around in the bar exam world and try and bring you some tips and techniques and interviews with successful students. So I'm glad you found us. If you'd like to watch these podcasts, you can do that by going to celebrationbarreview.com and then put in / and the episode number. This episode is 223, so celebrationbarreview.com /223. If you prefer to listen to your podcasts, and that might be what you're doing right now, we're available really wherever podcasts are syndicated, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, we're in all of those and many others. So check us out there. And we've got show notes either direction. We also have all of our past podcast episodes on our website. You'll find the link at the top of our website page. So you can check that out. There's lots of information there, lots of great resources as we start to turn the corner heading towards the 2019 exams, and specifically February 2019. When this episode releases, we're going to be about 106 days to that exam, so just under the 4-month mark. So lots of information. If you go back in our site, you'll see lots of episodes that we've done at appropriate times leading up to exams for the past 3 or 4 years. So kind of cool to check that out. Now, speaking of the February 2019 exams, I want to invite all of you to a very special free live training that I'm doing this Thursday night. That's November 8th. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern. That would be 4 o'clock Pacific time. It's called Do Something Different. Make the next bar exam your last bar exam. And in this 90-minute training, I'll be showing you the 4 steps that successful bar takers follow. It's a great opportunity for you to see a different roadmap to being successful on the exam. We'll supplement that with case studies and videos of students who've been successful talking in their own words about what worked for them and why it worked. And we're going to show you step by step what you need to do. Now, this training is completely free, but you do need to register. We've got a big group that's joining us on November 8th, so make sure you get in now. You can register in one of a couple of ways. You can go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com /webinar, or you can just go to our homepage. You'll see the link there to register. Or if you're watching the video or listening to the podcast, either way, on the show notes, you'll see a link there as well. Now, if this Thursday at 7 p.m. doesn't work for you, we also offer the same information in an on-demand daily format, so you can choose that if you prefer. The big difference, of course, is that on Thursday night, I'm going to do a live Q&A at the end. That's always interesting. I'll stick around and answer questions about the bar exam, and hope you'll join me for that. It's always informative and useful. We've had literally thousands of people go through this webinar over the past few years, and it's life-changing. So I hope you'll check that out. Again, go to celebrationbarreview.com /webinar. All right. Well, I want to jump into a discussion of the Texas bar results. As I said, the information and the numbers are not very good. Here's the basic bottom line. The overall pass rate for Texas was 64.69%. That was the overall number. The first-time bar taker pass rate was 73%, and the repeat bar taker pass rate was 29%. Now, what's significant about this is that the overall rate of 64% compares to July of 2017, where the pass rate was almost 72%. So we're looking at an 8% drop in the overall rate, and that is huge. But where it really comes out, the huge part of this was the repeat bar taker pass rate. In July of 2017, 48% of repeat bar takers passed, but in July of 2018, only 29% of repeat bar takers passed. That's a huge drop. We've got about the same number of bar takers overall in the exam for those 2 Julys. Now, the reason I'm comparing July to July is that it gives you a better mix of, or a more accurate mix between one exam and the next of the ratio between first-time and repeat bar takers. When we get to the February test, we have far more repeat takers and the overall rates are lower. So when you hear people talking about the bar exam rates are higher in July of 2018 in Texas, that's actually not really a completely truthful statement. You want to compare July to July. And when you look at an 8% drop in the overall, it's pretty stunning. That is not a good number in any circumstance. Even under the best of circumstances, a 65% pass rate, we would say, for a state exam is very, very low. If you were a first-time taker from a Texas law school, those numbers range pretty dramatically from a high of in the 90% from UT and Baylor down to a low of 44% for Texas Southern. So and those are first-time takers. When we get to the repeat takers, it's pretty bad all across the board. The best repeat taker rate came out of SMU at 76%, but we've got retake pass rates in the 30th percentile at many, many schools, and in the 20th percentile at St. Mary's. So it's pretty bad. When we look at the Texas attorneys, that group did relatively well, 87% pass rate for first-time takers. Out-of-staters had a 67% pass rate for first-time takers, but only a 20% pass rate for repeaters. And then there's a group in Texas, it's called Rule 13-3-4. These are graduates that come from accredited foreign law schools or non-U.S. educated attorneys, so a foreign-trained attorney. And this group had a real hard time on the exam. First-time foreign-trained graduates only passed at a 23% pass rate, and repeaters passed at a 12% pass rate. So quite low, very, very low activity there, and not very successful. So if you're a foreign-trained attorney and you're sitting for the Texas bar, I want to just say, do not skimp on your preparation. Don't try to do this too quickly. Don't try to do it without enough assistance. The exam is tough. For the very best, it's got less than a 25% pass rate. If you're a repeat bar taker, you've got a basically 1 in 10 chance of passing. Now, does that mean you should give up? Absolutely not. But you really need to bring the right tools. You need to do something different. And so that's why I really would encourage you. And if you're in that grouping, particularly as a foreign attorney or a repeat bar taker in Texas, I really want to encourage you to come to the free training that we do on Thursday. I do think it will help you and give you some insights as to what's going on. These numbers really feel like a train wreck, like something's really hit hard here. Was the exam itself that much harder? I don't know that it necessarily was, but the grading is clearly indicating a much lower success rate, really across every demographic, every metric that we could look at. So when we get to that point, I think we've just got to say that it's hard. This is a tough exam, and you've got to give yourself the time to get prepared and to study properly. Which is why I think it's important to share the stories of people who are successful on the exam. And that's what I wanted to do today. we had a student who took our course, as I say, in New York in July or in 2015, and he passed on his first try. And then he moved back to Texas. He'd gone to a Texas law school, and he wanted to sit for the Texas bar exam, as you'll hear. And so in July 2018, he sat for that, and he took our basic course. And he was kind of a no-drama guy. You'll see that pretty instantly when we're talking. But Jason was somebody who just followed the plan. He didn't try to deviate from it. He did what we asked him to do. He did it step by step while he was working full-time in a pretty demanding legal job. And he went through the process and turned out successfully. He beat the odds, I think, by almost any measure. And so I wanted to share Jason's story with you today because I think it's a reason to be encouraged and hopeful. Now, in our case studies on our website, you will see lots of interviews we've done with successful Texas bar exam students and students from all around the country. I think it's important to remember that there's reason to be hopeful and optimistic. Somebody contacted me this week and they said, one of the reasons I'm talking to you is it seems like you're about the only guy in bar review that's optimistic anymore. And I think that's true, and I think it's because what we're suggesting to people is that you can be successful even in these hard times if you take a different approach. But if you keep doing the same thing, and the same thing to me means memorize, recite, cram, issue spot, those things aren't working very well. And so when people say, I'm going to die on this hill with IRAC and issue spotting and so on, it's really a dumb hill to die on. There's no reason to put yourself through that. And so I'm really excited to share our discussion with Jason with you. I think you'll find he's a really polite and friendly guy. As I say, no drama, but very successful, obviously, and a great case study, I think, for what you can do on the Texas bar exam. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our discussion with successful two-time taker in two different jurisdictions, first-time passer in both, Jason Sorensen. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers, and we've got a fun story today. We've got not only a new passing Texas bar exam taker student, but somebody who also took the New York bar exam with us a long time ago and passed, and I want to welcome Jason Sorensen to the broadcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting times. Normally we talk to people who take the exam, 5, 6, 8, 10 times. They struggle. It's these stories of, real drama. And I'm not going to suggest that you don't have drama in your life, but it's kind of nice to talk to somebody who just quietly, without much fuss or muss or drama, manages to go for two on the bar exams in two pretty tough states. So you got to be feeling good about that.
Except for the one caveat, both times now I took New York and then they switched to UBE. Now I took Texas, and just last week they say they're going UBE. So
do you think I could get you? Yeah, could you take Georgia next? Because that's the one we want to, or California.
Yeah, that is a great city.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, isn't it? This switch. You do the exam and then they go to the UBE and it gets easier because the Texas bar is a bear cat, isn't it?
It is. I heard a lot of people saying New York was harder, but I felt much more stressed and taxed after Texas than I did New York.
Yeah, and Texas, of course, has these odd subjects like oil and gas, and then it has Texas procedure and evidence, which is part of a half day of the exam. Was that a bit of a struggle to get into all those Texas state-specific subjects for you?
Oil and gas especially was tough. I clerked for a trial judge for a year and a half. So the P&E section was almost exciting.
Yeah.
I remember how to do that.
Yeah.
So that part was good.
Yeah. But oil and gas is kind of weird, so that's part of it.
And guardianships was another one that it's just, there's so much to cover and you don't really know what the question is going to be. You kind of just have to roll the dice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's back up a little bit, and why don't you start by sort of telling people your story, how you ended up taking the New York bar and then being in a position to take the Texas bar.
Sure. Well, I went to law school in Texas, but wasn't really sure I wanted to practice here. And I had initially wanted to take Colorado, but my girlfriend at the time vetoed that. So we agreed on New York. Sign up, pay the fee, get your ticket and everything, and then she's no longer in the picture. But I say, what the heck? I paid the money, so I went to New York, took the exam, passed, but it was 2015. The job market was pretty tough. So I stayed here in Texas and kept working and finally decided to take the bullet and take Texas.
So from 2015 until 2018, you've got your New York bar license, but you're working in Texas. And I think this question comes up sometimes. People say, well, do I have to be licensed in the state that I live in? Well, for some jobs you do, but for some you don't. So it's perfectly acceptable to be licensed somewhere else and be working. But what made it better for you to have a Texas bar license? Why put yourself through that?
I worked for the legislature for a session, and that was great. But a lot of it was seeing lawyers do work that I could do in New York, but I couldn't do here in Texas, that I wanted to be doing. The stress of, not sure how you're going to be able to plan your life around events without knowing how things go. And finally, I just got to the point where I didn't feel like I was going anywhere positive, so I wanted a Texas license. So.
Yeah. Were you working for the Texas legislature or the New York?
Texas.
Okay.
The House Research.
Yeah. So a member of the Texas legislature, Armando Wally, took our bar review while he was in the legislature. Really? Yeah, and passed. So that's kind of talk about a crazy life to lead, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
You're involved in all of that and studying for the bar. In your case, and I think this is a good life lesson for people, a 3-4 year period with a bar license was enough to kind of get the monkey off your back. I'm licensed, I can do some things. And then you start looking at career opportunities, right? And saying, maybe I really do want to stay here in Texas rather than going to New York or somewhere else. And so it starts to make sense then that you're going to take the exam in that particular state. Did you feel like you had any advantage having taken and passed a bar previously?
Definitely. The stress spike peaks and troughs were, I think, a lot narrower. When I took New York, having gone to a Texas law school, I had kind of just decided I was going to bet the farm on the MBE and just change all the y'alls to you guys and hope for the best.
Did we tell you to do that? Was that our advice?
That may not have been a direct quote.
But it was pretty close. Okay. And so you've got that experience then. So when you're walking into the Texas exam, it's not like do or die here. You've already got a license, right? So I think that emotional spike that you talk about probably is not quite so great in that situation. On the other hand, you're studying while you're working, right?
Yes.
Okay. What was that like for you?
Yes. If you have a choice, I would recommend not working, but folks got to eat. Some of us more than others.
Yeah.
But it does. Like you work a full day. I was working full time.
Mm-hmm.
You have a whole day. You're ready to go home and just relax. But now you've actually got to study as if it's another full-time job.
Yeah. How many hours a week would you say you were studying?
The goal was always 4 hours a night. I didn't always hit that. I'd say 2 hours was more regular, and then I try to pick up the difference on the weekends.
Okay. And for how long a period of time did you study? When did you start back into your studies for the July exam?
April.
Okay.
So fairly late.
Yeah. So you got April, May, June, and July. So a 3 to 4 month period, which is what we would typically think of as being sort of the optimum at the short end of the optimum scale. And working 4 hours on nights, some nights 2, you say, and then some weekend hours. So 20 hours a week, is that a fair assumption, or maybe a bit more?
I think that's fair.
Okay. Now, you enrolled in our basic coaching program. I think both times you were in the course. How did that work for you? Because I get the question a lot. People say, well, can I pass if I don't have somebody reading my essays and reviewing them and going over them? What was your thinking about that, and why did you choose that course?
Yeah, so the second time it was because, I'd already had the New York pass. And actually, that's my score in New York was, on the MBE at least, was quite a bit lower than my Texas score. So I kind of just decided, it's like I did New York without ever going to a New York law school. So Texas, I should be fine. And I just need to hit the MBE really, really hard. And so I didn't feel like I needed the additional one-on-one time because, qualitatively, I had an idea of what they were looking for in the essays. I just needed to know what to say.
Right. And so the materials covered all of that for you, right? Between the lectures and the written materials.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so you followed the study guide pretty carefully in terms of the order of assignments and the things that you were asked to do? Okay.
Yes.
And so as you're going through, you're balancing then your multi-state studies and your Texas studies and the MPTs, which you had done in New York as well, right? That was part of the exam there. So
it was a fun one this year.
Yeah. This was an interesting one. You had the Rugby Association, wasn't it?
This year I had the gunshot.
Oh, this was the persuasive brief. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
The 2015 was a parent authority borrowed credit card snoozer.
Oh, that's right.
So this one you got violence and
yeah, mayhem, all sorts of cool stuff. Yeah, it was a persuasive brief. That's right. Okay. There were two performance tests. Texas only pulls one. I forgot that. That's right. So you got the more straightforward one. For those of you that are wondering, there was a second one about setting up articles of association for a rugby team.
Violence and mayhem as well.
Yeah, also violence and mayhem. So there you go. So the way the Texas bar exam is set up, for those that don't know it, is that there's a half day on Tuesday with P&E and the performance test. And then you're off in the afternoon, and then you've got Wednesday multi-state, same as everywhere in the country. And then on Thursday you have your essays, and we'll talk about those in a minute. I'm just curious though, how did you use Tuesday afternoon after you finished the MPT and P&Es?
I went to the zoo.
Okay, wasn't expecting that answer, but go ahead, tell me more.
Yeah, I felt like in the few hours I had left, it was more important to maintain a positive attitude and just don't let any negativity in. Don't overthink stuff. I didn't think the studying for that small amount of time would be a difference between a pass and a fail. So I went and tried to find the orangutans, but they were all sleeping because it was too hot, because it was Texas in July.
There you go. Well, I think we've just titled this interview. You went to the zoo during the bar exam. So there you go. All right. So now you're back in, second day for multi-state. And since you had taken it in New York, a seventh subject of civil procedure had been added. Did you notice any difference in taking the multi-state this time from before?
There's only one question that I remember because it stood out. It had to do with whether you could indict a sitting president that I didn't think was fair, because we don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd forgotten about the civil procedure change. That was one of my stronger subjects in school and something I was more familiar with. So if anything, I probably felt better about it.
Yeah, and so you come in, you do the day. It's a long day for sure. And then I think Texas makes it really challenging because now on the third day of the exam, this is the longest test in America now, you've got 12 essays to do, 6 broad topic areas, 2 essays of half an hour each in these subject areas. What was that like for you, just in terms of the physical endurance of it?
That made a huge difference. I remember when I finished New York on the second day, walking out after the MBE, just this wave of relief. You're done. You get to enjoy whatever you want to do. In Texas, you finish the MBE, and you're just like, oh my gosh, that mountain remains before you. You just have the hills behind you.
Yeah,
so definitely a big difference in terms of, and for me, I felt more comfortable with the MBE anyway. So I prefer doing the hard task first and then getting to the easy one, and this is kind of the opposite.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would agree with you. It's pretty tough to kind of get yourself physically and mentally back up the mountain on Thursday. And because of the structure of the exam, you get 2 questions at a time, an hour to do them. Did you allocate your time equally between questions?
No, because I think the calls of some questions, as I recall, were much narrower and easier to answer. And so it didn't make sense to allocate the same if I've got it. Now let's move on to the one that is maybe a little bit more challenging and try to get as many points on the board as possible.
Was your strategy to do the simpler question first in each pattern?
Yes.
Yeah. And did you type your answers?
No, I hand wrote.
You hand wrote.
I definitely would not do if I had to take it again.
Okay. See, I told you, folks. All right, so, but you looked at the questions and said, I think this one's a little shorter, fewer calls of the question, or more direct. Answer that, get it out of the way, and then use the remaining time on the more difficult question.
Right.
Okay, good. And, while we know the broad categories of questions, we don't know, specifically where they're going to go. And we don't know, for example, if we're going to get one oil and gas or two real property questions. We don't know with trusts and guardianships. I mean, there are some oddities there as we go through. Anything that was particularly surprising to you in the essay part of the exam?
No. There was... I was annoyed that oil and gas exists, but I thought the question was pretty fair, and it was bundled with, I believe, some community property or real property questions as well, so it wasn't just make or break. I felt like I had an idea of what the questions were going to be, and there was nothing totally out of left field.
Okay, good. So in terms of the writing, did you feel like you were prepared going in? I mean, you had felt like MBE was your strength, but you understood the writing, what you were going to be doing.
Yeah, my worst fears were harder than the tests that they gave us. So.
Okay, good. I'm glad. So we try to make it a little tougher. That's good stuff. So then you finish. What was it like at the exam? I mean, just generally, what did you have a different perspective having been through a bar before?
I did, and I sat down and I was kind of in my zen, okay, just flow with the water kind of mentality. And then I hand wrote, but immediately to the left of us on the other side is where the laptop section started. And the way they had the power strips, it looked like they were plugging one into the next one. And so we start smelling something.
Oh, geez.
We look over and there's smoke coming off of one of the tables. The power strip, I don't know if it was a short or what, but it started to overheat and burned a hole in the plastic table covering. So all I could think about was that poor girl when she sat down to take the bar exam. There was literally a burnt crisp for waiting for her, as you get superstitious enough going into the bar. Yeah.
Or either that or she was typing so fast that she was burning a hole in the page. So there you go. All right. Well, it's always interesting. You never know. Bar exams have their own quirks, don't they?
They do.
Yeah. So then you finish, and you've got this waiting period. And Texas does this odd thing. They announce a release date, and then they release before the release date. Historically, it's we're going to release on Monday, and then they actually send out results on Wednesday or Thursday. This year, we're going to release on a Friday, and then Monday morning, really without warning, just sort of it pops up in your email. You get an email from the examiners.
I'd been following some forums, and one of the Texas Supreme Court justices posted Sunday afternoon that the individual results were going to be coming out in the morning, and that's when everybody started.
Yeah, going crazy. Right. Yeah. So my email lit up Sunday night, and I was like, okay, here we go. So you get the results. What's it feel like? Different than the first time when you passed New York?
Yes. Because both times, you stress in the moment, and then it's done. There's not much you can do about it. You go on with your life. And then the couple weeks before grades come out, that's when all the built-up stress starts to bundle and pop. And I don't know why. I had just had this sick feeling that, you start to overthink all of the things on the essay. And then I was good about not torturing myself too much. Excuse me. But I did look at the questions once they posted them and thinking, oh man, I completely missed this, or oh, I didn't really answer this well, or oh, I totally forgot about this little thing to the set. You can't do anything about it, but
it still tortures you, doesn't it?
It happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I open, I'm shaking. I had been checking my phone all morning. The results hadn't come out. Finally, I left for work. I get on the elevator. This girl's beaming. I passed the bar exam. Then I'm suddenly frantically passing the floor button for ours to get it so I can check in. But once you see that, congratulations. I quit reading and started shaking. Yeah,
it's a great feeling. That's a wonderful thing. So now barred in 2 states, and maybe I can talk you into taking some more so I can get them switched to UBE. I like that idea. What advice would you give somebody that's sitting for the bar at this point? Now that you've successfully done it, you're twice, first time passing, so you're beating the odds by a long shot.
Take it seriously, but don't let it consume you. It's just like with law school. However difficult the material is, if you have a good attitude, you're going to have such an easier and better experience than if you criticize yourself, not constructively anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If you're hard on yourself, if you don't let yourself enjoy things as they're happening, just to be positive, for lack of a better.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, I think your mental attitude really makes all the difference, doesn't it? I mean,
100%.
and I'm sure you saw people at both exams that are just wired and completely freaked out, and it's pretty tough to be at your best when you're in that mode. So, I think by nature you're a pretty calm guy. That helps. But I think definitely to have that sort of peace of mind and just I'm going to go in and do my best and then let it go is probably the best approach to be taking. That's awesome.
Definitely.
Well, that's great. Okay, let me just ask, why did you choose Celebration Bar Review?
Honestly, the position I was in, I didn't have a lot of extra resources, and the monthly payment plan was great. Now, for when I took New York, I had found the app on the Android store.
Yeah.
Didn't know what it was. The price worked for me. I listened to the lectures and loved it, and it's like this was great. But for some reason, it didn't connect that it was celebration to celebration until I'd already paid everything, and I started listening to the first lecture, and I thought, oh my God, that's the same guy.
So there you go. So from the app to the basic coaching course. So that's pretty cool. Well, good. I'm glad that it worked for you, and I'm glad that you were able to have the success. I think sometimes people think they've got to throw the kitchen sink at it, and for some people they do. But frankly, there are people that just having access to the materials and the structure, the study guide, the questions, the lectures, and so on, that's ample, and you don't need a whole lot more than that. So I think it's nice, at least we think, being able to offer these different options so that people aren't buying more than they need. And I think you were pretty judicious about getting just what you needed and taking care of it that way. So I'm glad we could do that. Anything else that you want to share with our audience? I know that there are going to be people going, wow, man, I'd just be happy to pass one bar, much less two. But, so you're like a bar god now,
Well, that's...
Yeah.
I've never been accused of an overabundance of humility, but
okay,
I'm not sure I'd go that far. No, it's you reach a point of diminishing returns if you get to the point where you're just grinding your fingers to the bone, trying to chase after every little nuance in the law, and oh, there's this exception, but then there's this exception. Like, I knowing how to talk to the bar examiners, I think, is, at least for the essay portion, is the most important. And being consistent in your reasoning and applying it, knowing how much child support you need to pay for 7 kids across 3 dads, like, maybe that's helpful in practice, but I don't know that that's time well spent for the bar.
I agree. Well, I think you hit just the right balance all the way through, and you passed 2 of the toughest bars in the country. So, hats off to you and congratulations. I know it must feel great. And now you get to stay in Texas and do good things with your Texas bar license. So just really pleased for you. And I appreciate that you would come on and do the interview and share your story with us. I know that it'll encourage a lot of people to think, wow, I can do this. It's possible. I mean, I don't have to go crazy here. And so that's good news as well. So I want to thank you for being with us, Jason. It's really great to have you here. Look forward to hearing more great stuff, and let me know when you're ready to take that next bar exam, okay?
You'll know before I do, probably.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, everybody, thanks very much for being with us. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye. Well, that's our interview today. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Jason's trip to the zoo and his way of studying and preparing for the exam. Well, as I said, Texas results have been a tough pill to swallow. We've got one more big state remaining. That's California, coming up in November. We'll get those results mid-November, and we'll share that information with you. With the California results, most of the major states in the country will have now reported their results, and it is, as we indicated, across the country, lower results, lower scores than we've ever seen, or seen at least in the last 15 or 20 years. So, is it important to do something different? Yeah, I think it's critically important, and that's why this free training coming up on Thursday, November 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern, we really invite you to check it out. Go to celebrationbarreview.com webinar to sign up and claim your seat. We're going to show you how to make the next bar exam your last bar exam, and I know that can make all the difference in your life and in your world. Well, thanks for being with us all this week. We will be back again next week. We've got more great interviews lined up, more information for you. Of course, we'll give you any late-breaking bar exam news as we get it. And hope everybody has a great week. We'll see you on the pass list and along the extra mile. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.